Imagine waking up to a deeper perception of reality. Imagine beginning to sense that life is more than routines, roles, and appearances. You start questioning old beliefs, observing your thoughts, and feeling moments of profound clarity and connection. This is what many call spiritual awakening. But here is a truth rarely spoken about, a truth that confuses, frustrates, and sometimes even shames those who walk this path. Alongside heightened awareness, many spiritually awakened people find themselves struggling intensely with lust. Not a simple attraction, but a powerful inner tension that feels contradictory to their search for peace, balance, and transcendence. Think about this for a moment. Why would someone who meditates, reflects, and seeks higher understanding feel overwhelmed by desire? Why does lust often grow stronger, not weaker, after awakening begins? And most importantly, what if this struggle is not a failure of spirituality, but a hidden doorway to deeper integration and wisdom? Stay with me, because the final insight in this journey is the most important and transformative of all, and it has the power to completely change how you understand desire, control, and spiritual growth. This channel is dedicated to exploring the deepest reflections of great philosophers, psychologists, and thinkers who dared to look honestly at human nature. Here, ancient wisdom meets modern insight to help you navigate daily challenges with clarity and depth. If you are someone who feels called to self-knowledge, inner growth, and understanding the invisible forces that shape your behavior, you are in the right place. Take a moment now to subscribe, leave a like, share this video, and comment your thoughts, because what you are about to hear may shift the way you see yourself and the world. Alan Watts, one of the most influential interpreters of Eastern philosophy for the Western mind, often spoke about desire not as an enemy, but as an expression of life itself. According to him, the problem begins when the ego tries to dominate, suppress, or moralize natural energies. Lust in this sense is not merely sexual craving. It is life's impulse to experience, to merge, to feel alive through the body. When spiritual awakening begins, awareness expands, but the ego does not disappear overnight. Instead, it often becomes more subtle, more strategic, and more conflicted. Carl Jung, the pioneering psychologist, explained that whatever is rejected by consciousness does not vanish. It goes underground, into the shadow. Spiritually awakened individuals often adopt ideals of purity, detachment, and transcendence. While these ideals can inspire growth, they can also create inner division. The body desires, the mind judges, and the soul feels torn between them. This internal split intensifies lust because resistance fuels obsession. The more one tries to escape desire, the more energy is fed into it. Have you ever noticed how forbidden thoughts seem to return with greater force? This is not weakness. It is a psychological law. Jung observed that suppressed instincts seek expression in distorted forms. Lust becomes secretive, compulsive, and filled with guilt, not because it is inherently wrong, but because it is denied conscious understanding. Spiritual awakening increases sensitivity, making this tension even more pronounced. Alan Watts warned that spirituality becomes dangerous when it turns into a war against the self. He emphasized that you cannot achieve harmony by amputating parts of your nature. When awakened individuals try to rise above the body instead of including it, lust becomes the symbol of everything they fear losing control over. Desire then feels like a threat to enlightenment, rather than a message from life asking to be listened to. Think about how many spiritual traditions misunderstood this dynamic. Instead of teaching integration, they taught repression. Instead of awareness, they taught control. Yet Eastern philosophies, which Watts deeply admired, never viewed desire as evil. In Taoism, desire is energy. In Buddhism, craving causes suffering only when clung to or resisted. The struggle arises not from desire itself, but from the mind's refusal to allow it to flow naturally. Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt that your spiritual awareness made your desires more intense rather than less? Have you questioned whether something is wrong with you because of it? If so, know that you are not alone, and more importantly, you are not broken. This struggle is not a sign of spiritual failure. It is a sign that unconscious material is rising to be integrated. As awakening progresses, suppressed instincts surface because awareness acts like light. Light does not create what it reveals. It simply exposes what was already there. Lust becomes visible, sometimes uncomfortably so, because the mind can no longer hide from itself. This is where many give up, believing they are unworthy of spiritual depth. But this is actually the threshold of a much deeper realization. In the next part, we will explore why lust often disguises itself as emptiness, how modern society amplifies this inner conflict, and why chasing pleasure is often a desperate attempt to escape disconnection. More importantly, we will begin uncovering how understanding desire instead of fighting it becomes the first step toward genuine inner freedom. Before we continue, reflect on this and share your thoughts in the comments. Do you see desire as an obstacle, or could it be an invitation to deeper self-knowledge? Think about how often lust appears when there is a quiet sense of inner emptiness. Not the obvious emptiness of boredom, but a subtler one. A feeling of disconnection from meaning, presence, or intimacy with life itself. Many spiritually awakened people begin to sense this emptiness more clearly because they are no longer distracted by superficial identities. As the old structures of meaning dissolve, desire rushes in to fill the space. Lust then becomes less about the other person and more about trying to feel whole again. Alan Watts spoke frequently about how modern society misunderstands pleasure. We are taught to chase intensity instead of depth, stimulation instead of presence. For the awakened mind, this contradiction becomes painful. On one hand, there is awareness of impermanence and illusion. On the other, there is a nervous system still conditioned by thousands of years of instinct. Lust emerges as a powerful surge of vitality, but without understanding, it turns into compulsion rather than communion. Psychologist Viktor Frankl observed that when meaning is absent, pleasure becomes a substitute. This is especially relevant for those on a spiritual path. When old beliefs collapse and new insights have not yet stabilized, desire often fills the gap. Lust promises immediate aliveness, a brief escape from existential uncertainty. It is not simply sexual, it is a hunger to feel grounded in the body when the mind feels unmoored. Have you noticed how desire intensifies during moments of inner confusion or emotional vulnerability? This is not coincidence. The body seeks regulation through sensation. The awakened individual feels this more acutely because sensitivity has increased. The tragedy is that many mistake this for moral failure rather than understanding it as a signal of unmet integration. Carl Jung described libido not merely as sexual energy, but as psychic energy itself. When spiritual insight expands consciousness, this energy does not disappear. It must go somewhere. If not consciously integrated, it spills into obsession. This is why lust can feel overwhelming for those who meditate, reflect, and study wisdom. They have opened the channels of awareness, but not yet learned how to guide the flow. Alan Watts emphasized that the attempt to control desire is itself desire. Wanting to be free of lust is still a form of craving. This paradox traps many awakened individuals in a loop of self-judgment. The more they judge desire, the more fragmented they feel. The more fragmented they feel, the more desperately desire seeks expression. Consider how society amplifies this struggle. We live in a culture saturated with sexual imagery, yet starved of genuine intimacy. Desire is constantly provoked but rarely understood. For the spiritually sensitive person, this creates internal conflict. Awareness recognizes manipulation and illusion, yet the body still responds. This split deepens shame and secrecy, pushing lust further into the shadows. Ask yourself honestly, is lust always about pleasure, or is it often about wanting to be seen, touched, affirmed, or remembered? Many awakened individuals discover that beneath lust lies a profound longing for union, not merely with another body, but with life itself. Alan Watts often said that the universe experiences itself through us. Desire, then, is not personal failure. It is cosmic movement expressed through individual form. When this is not understood, the awakened person feels isolated. They believe others on the path are more disciplined, more pure, more advanced. But in truth, many carry the same struggle in silence. Spiritual communities often reward appearances of control rather than honesty. This creates an environment where desire is hidden instead of transformed. Let me ask you something deeply important. What if lust is not the problem, but the refusal to listen to what it is pointing toward? What if desire is asking not for indulgence, but for presence? Watts suggested that when desire is fully observed without judgment, it loses its compulsive grip. Awareness does not kill desire, it refines it. In Eastern philosophy, particularly Zen, enlightenment is not about escaping human impulses, but seeing through them. When lust arises, the practice is not suppression, but clear seeing. Who is desiring? What is actually being sought? Is it the person or the feeling of wholeness that the person seems to represent? As awakening deepens, desire begins to reveal its true nature. It is not an enemy to be defeated, but energy waiting to be understood. However, this understanding requires courage. It requires stepping beyond moral labels and confronting the raw movements of the psyche. In the next part, we will go even deeper. We will explore how lust transforms when it is met with awareness instead of resistance, why integration is the missing key in most spiritual teachings, and how the very energy that causes inner conflict can become a source of clarity, creativity, and inner power. Before we move forward, reflect on this and share your insight. Do you feel that desire is pulling you away from your path, or could it be inviting you to walk it more honestly? When desire is no longer treated as an enemy, something profound begins to shift. The struggle softens, not because lust disappears, but because the inner war ends. Alan Watts often reminded his listeners that life is not meant to be conquered. It is meant to be experienced. The moment you stop fighting desire as if it were a flaw, you begin to see its intelligence. Lust carries information. It reveals where energy is blocked, where intimacy with oneself is missing, and where consciousness has not yet fully descended into the body. One of the greatest misunderstandings on the spiritual path is the idea that awakening happens only in the mind. Many people wake up cognitively. They understand impermanence, illusion, and non-duality, but their bodies remain conditioned by fear, tension, and unmet emotional needs. This creates a split. The mind speaks the language of transcendence, while the body speaks the language of sensation. Lust becomes the bridge between these two worlds, but only if it is allowed to be felt without distortion. Wilhelm Reich, a student of Freud who deeply influenced later body-oriented psychology, observed that suppressed sexual energy turns into anxiety, aggression, and compulsive behavior. From this perspective, lust is not excess energy, it is trapped energy. Spiritually awakened people often intensify this trap by adding spiritual judgment to biological impulses. They do not merely repress desire, they spiritualize the repression. This is why the struggle feels so exhausting. Carl Jung warned that spirituality without integration leads to inflation. The ego identifies with higher ideals and distances itself from instinct. This creates a false sense of elevation while the shadow grows stronger. Lust then appears in intrusive thoughts, fantasies, or secret behaviors that feel out of control. The psyche demands balance. What is denied in daylight returns at night. Alan Watts approached this with humor and clarity. He pointed out that trying to be above desire is just another desire, the desire to be superior to nature. True awakening, according to him, is realizing that you are nature. Your impulses are not obstacles to the path, they are part of the terrain. When you stop pretending otherwise, desire loses its compulsive edge. Have you ever noticed that lust feels strongest when you are disconnected from your body, not when you are fully present in it? Many people confuse presence with suppression, but presence is the opposite. Presence means feeling sensation without immediately acting on it or escaping it. It means allowing desire to rise, peak, and fall naturally, like a wave. When this happens, lust transforms into vitality rather than obsession. Ancient Taoist teaching spoke of sexual energy as life force. When circulated consciously, it nourishes clarity, creativity, and emotional stability. When blocked by fear or moral rigidity, it stagnates. Spiritually awakened individuals often sense this energy, but do not know how to relate to it skillfully. They oscillate between indulgence and denial, never discovering the middle path of awareness. Let me ask you something uncomfortable but necessary. What if the intensity of your lust is proportional to how much of yourself you are still afraid to embody? Awakening calls not only for expanded consciousness, but for deeper incarnation. It asks you to fully inhabit your humanity, not escape it. Alan Watts often criticized spiritual paths that treated the body as a problem to be solved. He argued that enlightenment that excludes the body is incomplete. Desire then becomes the rebel, forcing attention back to what has been neglected. Lust is the body saying, remember me, feel me, include me. When desire is met with curiosity instead of judgment, it begins to change quality. It slows down. It becomes more subtle, less urgent. The mind no longer needs to fantasize compulsively because sensation itself becomes rich enough. This is not repression. It is refinement through awareness. Modern neuroscience supports this insight. Studies on mindfulness show that observing impulses without acting on them reduces compulsive behavior over time. Awareness strengthens the capacity to stay present with discomfort and pleasure alike. Lust loses its power to dominate because it is no longer unconscious. As this integration deepens, a surprising thing happens. Desire no longer feels like a threat to spirituality. It becomes a teacher. It shows where attachment still lives, where fear still hides, and where love wants to grow. This is the stage where many experience profound transformation, but only if they stop running. In the final part, we will bring everything together. We will explore the ultimate insight Alan Watts offered about desire and freedom, why acceptance is more powerful than control, and how embracing lust consciously can lead not to indulgence, but to genuine inner peace and maturity. Before we continue, take a moment to reflect and share in the comments. Has your spiritual journey brought you closer to your body or pushed you away from it? At the deepest level, Alan Watts offered an insight that dissolves the entire conflict around lust and spirituality. He said that freedom is not found by getting rid of desire, but by seeing that there is no separate controller standing outside of it. Desire happens, thoughts happen, sensations happen. The suffering begins only when the mind creates a false observer who claims ownership and tries to manipulate what is already moving. This is the final and most powerful realization. Lust does not enslave you. The belief that you must either obey it or destroy it is what creates bondage. When desire arises and is fully allowed into awareness without resistance or indulgence, it reveals its empty nature. It has intensity, but no permanence. It has movement, but no command. It is energy passing through consciousness, not a verdict on who you are. Spiritually awakened people struggle most when they believe enlightenment should feel clean, controlled, and serene at all times. This expectation creates violence against natural experience. Alan Watts warned that spirituality becomes toxic when it turns life into a self-improvement project. The moment you try to perfect yourself, you step out of harmony with the flow that already knows how to balance itself. Think carefully about this. The ocean does not try to calm its waves. The forest does not apologize for its wild growth. Yet humans believe they must edit themselves to deserve peace. Lust is simply one of the waves. When you stop labeling it as a spiritual flaw, it loses the power to define you. Carl Jung described this stage as individuation, the process of becoming whole. Wholeness does not mean purity. It means inclusion. The shadow is not eliminated. It is integrated. Desire no longer hides in secrecy. It becomes transparent. And what becomes transparent loses its compulsive grip. Many awakened individuals notice that when they stop fighting lust, it naturally changes form. It becomes less obsessive, less urgent, and more connected to genuine intimacy. Attraction becomes appreciation. Sexual energy becomes creativity. Longing becomes presence. This is not discipline imposed from above. It is wisdom emerging from understanding. Alan Watts emphasized that when you see through the illusion of the separate self, desire no longer feels personal. It is life enjoying itself through form. When this is recognized, shame dissolves. Guilt dissolves. What remains is responsibility without repression. Awareness without fear. Ask yourself this honestly. Ask, what if your struggle with lust was never meant to be conquered, but understood? What if it was the very mechanism through which life was inviting you to inhabit your humanity more fully, not as a problem to solve, but as a mystery to live? When desire arises, you no longer ask, how do I stop this? You ask, what is being felt right now? Where is the sensation? What story is the mind adding? This simple shift changes everything. Presence replaces control. Curiosity replaces judgment. Integration replaces inner war. This is the paradox Alan Watts pointed to again and again. The moment you stop trying to be spiritual, you begin to live spiritually. The moment you stop trying to transcend desire, desire finds its rightful place, not as a master, not as an enemy, but as a movement within the whole. True awakening does not remove your humanity. It reveals it without distortion. Lust then becomes neither a secret shame nor a dangerous force. It becomes one expression of aliveness among many. Seen clearly, it no longer demands. It simply passes. And in that passing, something extraordinary happens. You discover that peace was never on the other side of desire. It was always in the awareness that could hold it. If this reflection resonated with you, share your thoughts and experiences in the comments. Your insight may help someone who believes they are alone in this struggle. And remember, awakening is not about becoming something else. It is about finally allowing yourself to be whole. Thanks for looking.